Ever wonder why the 1970s felt like an open wound on the silver screen? This was the decade when real-life scandals, Watergate, oil embargoes, subway strikes, spilled straight into movie houses, turning crime films into barbed wire reflections of a restless society. Tonight we crack open that volatile vault, revealing 15 hard-hitting crime capers you simply must watch. The French Connection, 1971. New York in '71 was a concrete jungle of distrust. Director William Friedkin sensed the city's raw nerves and sharpened them into Popeye Doyle, Gene Hackman's obsessively flawed narc. The story, ripped from the real 1961 heroin bust, unfolds like a guerrilla documentary. Handheld cameras, natural light, and dialogue so salty you can almost taste the East River breeze. What stamped this picture into fame lore was its chase. Doyle barrels his Pontiac Le Mans under the elevated train, gunning after a hitman above. Friedkin shot the sequence guerrilla style without full permits. Stunt driver Bill Hickman hit 90 miles per hour amid actual morning traffic. Audiences gasped, critics cheered, and the Academy crowned it Best Picture, a first for an R-rated film. The French Connection's $51 million haul against a $1.8 million budget proved that gritty realism could mint box office gold. More importantly, it forever blurred the moral line, making anti-heroes bankable and setting the '70s template for cops who break rules because the streets already did. Dog Day Afternoon, 1975. Blistering Brooklyn heat, one blazing August afternoon, Al Pacino's Sonny shouts, "Attica!" and the counterculture cheers. Based on the real 1972 Chase Manhattan heist, Sidney Lumet's film rejects polished robbery tropes for talk show immediacy. Cameras linger on sweating brows and restless crowds, echoing the era's live TV hostage crises. Pacino improvised entire stretches, channeling post-Vietnam despair into a character robbing a bank to pay for his lover's gender-affirming surgery. An LGBTQ+ subplot almost unheard of in studio crime pictures then. Fame fact, Newsweek's cover story on the actual event rose 40% in sales after the movie opened, showing cinema's power to rewrite headlines. Dog Day earned 6 Oscar nods and inspired the FBI to update hostage negotiation protocols, proof a film could alter real-world law enforcement playbooks. Yet its most lasting punch is emotional. The moment Sonny's grand plan melts under fluorescent lights, revealing a man crushed by systemic failures, a sentiment '70s America knew all too well. The Getaway, 1972. Cue the prison siren. Steve McQueen's Doc McCoy walks free on a corrupt parole, courtesy of Texas kingpin Jack Benyon, and instantly dives into a bank job that unravels like a rattlesnake in a burlap sack. Sam Peckinpah weaponizes slow-motion carnage, but the true electricity crackles between McQueen and real-life partner Ally McGraw. Their stares feel hotter than a parking lot pistol, mirroring the tabloid frenzy. Gossip columns reported their off-screen affair almost daily, helping The Getaway top the 1972 Christmas box office. Peckinpah's insistence on location sound, no looping, locks viewers inside echoing vaults and dusty motels, amplifying tension. Meanwhile, Quincy Jones's funk jazz score fused black exploitation rhythms with country twang, forecasting the decade's genre-mixing soundtracks. Financially, the film's $36 million domestic take bailed out fledgling First Artists Productions and greenlit riskier star-run projects. Story-wise, its bleak final shot, lovers driving toward a horizon that might kill them, captured a 70-second truth. Even victories felt bruised. The Taking of Pelham 123, 1974. No other film turned New York's dilapidated subway into a loaded gun quite like this one. Joseph Sargent's thriller begins at 1:23 p.m. when 4 men in colored ski masks hijack a downtown 6 train. Walter Matthau's sardonic transit cop faces Robert Shaw's icy mercenary over crackling radio static, an auditory duel that felt eerily real because the production borrowed an actual MTA control room during late-night hours. Fame fact: city officials feared copycats, forcing producers to pay a $50,000 insurance bond against real hijack attempts. Money wisely spent when crimes briefly spiked after release. The film's ticking clock structure echoed disaster movies, yet its cynical humor, "Sprechen Sie talk?" reflected a Big Apple tired of budget crises and graffiti-tagged despair. Composer David Shire's atonal jazz-funk score mimicked screeching rails, later sampled by Beastie Boys and Quentin Tarantino, proving its cultural aftershock. Pelham's $20 million gross on a $4 million budget reassured studios that urban anxiety could be pure popcorn, provided the ride never slows. Charley Varrick, 1973. Meet Walter Matthau again, but forget the wisecracks. Charley Varrick is lean, lethal, and 2 steps ahead of both cops and mobsters. When Charley's small-town bank heist nets mafia laundering cash instead of petty deposits, the man nicknamed Last of the Independents must outfox killers with nothing but aerial crop-dusting skills and a magician's sleight of hand. Director Don Siegel, hot off Dirty Harry, paints Nevada deserts in sun-scorched widescreen, making emptiness feel like a predator. Aerofact, the film's inventive gadgetry, the remote control model plane rigged with explosives, predated modern drone fears, inspiring real security seminars on airborne threats. Though modest at the box office, Charley Varrick grew into a VHS cult hit, championed by filmmakers like Tarantino, who praised its blue-collar MacGyver vibe. The punchline? Charley escapes disguised as a corpse, flipping the decade's fatalism on its head. In the 70s, survival belonged not to the toughest gun, but to the smartest gambler. The Sting, 1973. Slide into 1936 Chicago, filtered through 1970s cynicism, and watch grifter duo Paul Newman and Robert Redford spin a con so smooth it feels like jazz on vinyl. Director George Roy Hill serves the narrative in crisp chapters, each title card etched like an antique shop sign, inviting us to play accomplice. The plot: rookie hustler Johnny Hooker vows revenge after a numbers-runner friend is iced by crime, boss Doyle Lonigan. Enter veteran con-man Henry Gondorf, who orchestrates The Wire, a fake betting parlor that drains Lonigan's ego one mark at a time. Fame fact: ragtime pianist Scott Joplin, dead since 1917, re-entered Billboard's top 10 when Marvin Hamlish's arrangements of The Entertainer soared on radio, proving a period soundtrack could outsell rock singles in 1974. The Sting bagged 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, while its $160 million worldwide gross made it the year's top earner. Yet its real con was cultural. Amid post-Watergate distrust, Americans found catharsis watching crooks fleece a bigger crook, all with sly winks that said, "We're in on it too." Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, 1974. Big sky country, rolling wheat fields, and a cannon-blasted safe tumbling through the prairie. Michael Cimino's debut mashes road movie freedom with heist movie nerves. Clint Eastwood's grizzled bankcracker Thunderbolt teams with Jeff Bridges' free-spirited drifter Lightfoot chasing a stolen cache hidden inside an old one-room schoolhouse. Their friendship, half mentor-student, half wayward brothers, became iconic enough to net Bridges an Oscar nod. Fame fact: the film popularized the .30 caliber recoilless rifle in pop culture. Sporting goods stores reported a spike in inquiries after the movie's release, alarming law enforcement. Tonally, Cimino balances sunset vistas against sudden brutality, forecasting his later masterpiece, The Deer Hunter. At the box office, a solid $25 million on a $4 million budget told studios that crime tales could breathe outside city smog. But the gut punch arrives in the final mile. Lightfoot's smile fading into fatal silence, reminding 70s audiences that chasing the American dream often ended in roadside dust. The Anderson Tapes, 1971. Before CCTV became everyday paranoia, Sidney Lumet dropped this surveillance state prophecy disguised as a Madison Avenue burglary. Sean Connery sheds Bond's tux for ex-con John Anderson, who plans to loot an entire luxury apartment building on a holiday weekend. Unbeknownst to him, every move is taped by the FBI, IRS, even a grocery store security firm, each agency hoarding its own intel silo and missing the bigger crime. Era fact, the film is Hollywood's first to dramatize the omnipresence of electronic eavesdropping right after congressional hearings on illegal wiretaps hit nightly news. Composer Quincy Jones layers in a pulsating tape loop score echoing spinning reels, while a 22-year-old Christopher Walken makes his film debut as jittery sidekick, the Kid. The Anderson tapes banked a respectable $12 million, but its cultural ROI ballooned later. Privacy scholars cite it as mainstream cinema's opening shot against unchecked government eyes. Its final irony, that competing agencies fail to see the crime they've recorded, felt painfully on the nose for a decade, still reeling from Watergate bugs. The Driver, 1978. Los Angeles after midnight. Neon reflections, empty boulevards, and a wheelman known only as the Driver. Walter Hill strips dialogue to bare wiring, directing Ryan O'Neal through existential chases where tires scream louder than actors. The plot circles a simple dare. Can the driver outwit Bruce Dern's obsessive detective long enough to land one last score? But the execution hums like a metronome made of steel. Hill insisted on real speed stunts. Their rawness later schooled Grand Theft Auto programmers who cited the driver as DNA. Fame fact, France's Cahiers du Cinéma declared it pure cinema, inspiring the entire cinema de look wave of the 80s. Domestically, it underperformed, only $5 million, but European critics crowned it cult royalty, proving sometimes America exports its coolest art for others to appreciate first. Its stylistic echoes resurfaced in Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive, 2011, where neon and synthwave paid homage. In the 70s, though, the driver's silent rebellion resonated with viewers weary of chatter. Sometimes speed itself was the statement. Straight Time, 1978. Dustin Hoffman channels parolee Max Dembo, a man who lasts mere hours on the straight before Los Angeles's gray streets lure him back to smash-and-grab robberies. Ulu Grosbard directs with almost documentary restraint. Fluorescent pawn shops buzz, motel carpets stink, and every second ticks like a parole officer's watch. Hoffman, who also co-produced, studied San Quentin inmates and performed several real safe-cracking drills, bruising his hands until calloused. Fame fact, during production, co-star Gary Busey broke a prop window with such force the safety glass failed, cutting him badly and prompting stricter stunt protocols at Warner Bros. Straight Time made modest coin, $7 million, but critics hailed its grim honesty. Roger Ebert called it a heist film with the nerves ripped raw. More crucially, its bleak finale, Max fleeing alone, his lover weeping in the rearview, helped usher in the 80s neo-noir surge. For 70s viewers fighting Rust Belt layoffs and rising crime, Max's doomed hustle whispered an unsettling truth. Sometimes society hands you the getaway car and locks every other door. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973. It's late autumn Boston, where the Charles River seems to whisper bad omens. Eddie Coyle, played with bone-deep weariness by Robert Mitchum, is a small-time gunrunner staring at a prison stretch he can't survive. Director Peter Yates lights every Irish bar and North End alley with bruised sodium glare, turning New England chill into a character that gnaws at the bone. The plot sounds simple. Eddie sells guns to a bank-robbing crew while angling to snitch his way to freedom. But the genius lies in watching loyalties dissolve like cigarette ash. Every conversation is barroom jazz, low, tense, unsentimental. Fame fact, screenwriter Paul Monash lifted dialogue almost verbatim from George Fufev Higgins' novel, giving Boston its first mainstream use of the slang Southie, which later seeped into national lexicon. At preview screenings, actual Beantown cops reportedly cheered when Eddie's last hope vanished, a testament to the film's uncomfortable realism. Though it grossed a modest $5 million, its ripple effect was huge. The friends of Eddie Coyle convinced studios that quiet authenticity could hit harder than car chases, paving the way for later Boston crime sagas like The Departed. Mitchum himself called it his favorite performance, and you feel why in that final, heartbreakingly polite goodbye to a life that never paid off. What makes it essential? The movie argues that in the 70s underworld, honor among thieves was just another handshake deal waiting to be broken. Watching Eddie navigate predators with nothing but his worn-out pride feels like peering into America's fraying blue-collar soul, right before it's pawned for bail money. The Hot Rock, 1972. Imagine a heist so cursed it becomes slapstick tragedy. That's the delicious loop Robert Redford and George Segal sprint through in The Hot Rock, stealing the same priceless diamond again, and again, and again. Director Peter Yates mixes deadpan timing with kinetic New York street photography. Times Square marquees still shouting 25-cent peep shows, while William Goldman's script fires off quips faster than a subway turnstile. Each botched grab ratchets tension, yet you laugh because these crooks are modern Sisyphuses, doomed to roll one glittering stone uphill forever. Era tidbit: Quincy Jones's funk brass score transformed a jazzy side B track called Afghanistan Bananistan into a cult catchphrase. Record stores reported spikes in soundtrack sales from college towns where the film played midnight slots. Commercially, The Hot Rock logged $17 million. Solid, not spectacular. But critics adored its fusion of breezy caper antics and Watergate-era cynicism. The takeaway? Even victimless crime carried a karmic invoice in the 70s, and sometimes that bill looped back like a boomerang. Slip this film into your watch list for the sheer joy of seeing Redford in perpetual crisis mode, a golden boy learning that luck can rust overnight, and that New York, in all its grime and glory, rarely hands out mulligans. Fun with Dick and Jane, 1977. Suburbia never looked so desperate. Dick and Jane Harper drive carpool kids, trim hedges, and, after one brutal layoff, whip out ski masks to rob the institutions that sold them the American dream. George Segal and Jane Fonda play the glossy couple cracking under stagflation and gasline misery, turning cul-de-sac monotony into Bonnie and Clyde farce. Director Ted Kotcheff shoots sun-drenched lawns like crime scenes, proving white picket fences can fence you in. Fame fact: Fonda donated a chunk of her salary to fund California farm worker strikes, echoing the movie's righteous rage. At the box office, it snagged $100 million worldwide, a shocker for a satire released just months after New York's infamous blackout and nationwide recession headlines. Finance magazines even ran tongue-in-cheek pieces on DIY economic survival, quoting the film while warning real families not to emulate the Harpers' stick-up spree. Why does it still bite? Fun with Dick and Jane weaponizes humor to expose a truth the 70s knew all too well. When the system crumbles, even PTA presidents might reach for a pistol. And the film's final punchline, a corporate bailout sealing their escape, feels eerily prophetic: the first great train robbery, 1979. Step back to Victorian England, but keep your 70s attitude locked and loaded. Writer-director Michael Crichton adapts his own bestseller into a whirring clockwork of top hats, gold ingots, and audacious athleticism. Sean Connery's master thief, Edward Pierce, plans to swipe Queen Victoria's Crimean War payroll mid-journey, a stunt requiring duplicate keys, nervous acrobats, and disguises sharp enough to fool Scotland Yard. Donald Sutherland's pickpocket and Leslie Ann Down's con-woman supply bodywit, reminding you that polite society has always harbored rogues. Era standout: Connery performed the rooftop sprint across a moving locomotive himself, no stunt double, forcing Lloyd's of London to write a record-setting insurance policy. Cinemagoers gasped. Newspapers ran full-page spreads on Bond's most dangerous role, and ticket lines snaked around blocks. The film netted $30 million domestic, but its larger legacy lay in revitalizing period capers. Suddenly, studios greenlit everything from Ragtime to Time After Time. Jerry Goldsmith's jaunty harpsichord score even charted briefly on U.S. easy listening radio, proof that old-world swagger could groove in the disco era. Slot this gem into your queue when you crave heists served with velvet gloves, razor wit, and the lesson that technology may evolve, but larcenous imagination is timeless. The Brinks Job, 1978. If the French Connection showed Boston's brutal side, the Brinks Job uncovers its mischievous grin. Jonathan Demme directs Peter Falk as petty crook Tony Pino, who notices Brinks' armored depot treats its own security like a joke, doors left ajar, alarms unplugged, guards more interested in coffee than cash. With a ragtag crew of neighborhood bumpkins, Pino executes what Life magazine dubbed the crime of the century, nabbing $2.8 million in 1950 dollars, about $30 million today. Production legend. Demme convinced real North End residents to appear as extras, pumping local taverns for anecdotes that found their way into improv-heavy dialogue. The authenticity wowed critics. Pauline Kael praised it as ragged, affectionate, and slyly political. Though it earned just $17 million, the movie's release overlapped Boston's still unsolved 1975 art museum heist, causing regional theaters to beef up security. Life imitating art, imitating life. Why end here? The Brinks Job sums up the 70s caper ethos, ordinary folks versus complacent systems, humor masking hunger, and an aftertaste of how long can we really get away with this? It's breezy yet sobering, reminding us that every perfect score casts a long moral shadow, and that shadow often lands right back on the neighborhood stoop. There you have it, 15 bruising, brainy 70s crime capers that stole our breath and never gave it back. Which getaway ride will you hop into first? Drop your pick in the comments, smash that like button if you dig deep-cut cinema, and subscribe for more Hidden Vault film lists. Until next time, keep the engine running and watch your rear view.